Man rocks.
Hello, this is the MetaMan with a very startling presentation. This presentation proves, actually five proofs that Bitcoin will hit $2 million a coin. Now, I'm not just doing this as clickbait. I'm not just doing this because it'll excite you and maybe cause you to like me more because I have such a great prediction. No, I'm doing it because in my opinion, it's the closest prediction I can make to where Bitcoin's going to be. Not tomorrow, not by the end of the Russia Ukraine war. I mean, by let's say the year 2030, I think Bitcoin will be $2 million, not Lambo. Many people say Lambo crypto, which is maybe $250,000. No, I think it's going to be way, way, way higher than that. And so what should you do? You can listen to what I say. And if you like it, you may want to invest in Bitcoin. However, this is entertainment and education only. It's not investment advice. Get information from me, get information from others, make your own wise decision as to what you should do, because each person's risk preference is different and each person's financial situation is different and each person's age is different. So you make your own decisions. But here's my decision: $2 million Bitcoin by, let's say, the year 2030. And I'm going to give you five proofs. That's what the thumbnail said, five proofs. But since I always want to over deliver, I will give you six proofs. Six proofs. Let's get started. First of all, inflation. Inflation is at a 40-year high, a 40-year high. That is shocking. That means things that you need to buy are inflating faster than you can afford to buy them because your salary has not skyrocketed. If you're in business, your income from business hasn't gone up on its own. Like, it may have gone up because you're doing a better job or you're selling better. But if you sell exactly the same number of units, your profit hasn't skyrocketed. And yet the push against you, because you're holding your assets in fiat currency, like the US dollar, Canadian dollar, pound sterling. If you hold your assets, if you do your transactions in the dollar or the pound or the euro, then you are losing money faster than you've ever lost money in 40 years. For example, oil has just crossed $100 a barrel. That's shocking. If you look at the screen right now, you can see that gasoline at the pump has gone up 50%. Just recently, gasoline has gone up 50%. And even more shocking, most economists will tell you that some of the most inflationary items that you have to pay for are not in the consumer price index. Like, the cost of a house is not in the consumer price index, and yet that one is going up by hundreds of thousands of dollars and it's not even included. And so likely the inflationary rate is much higher than even the official governments are declaring. Now, why do I say that? So what? So inflation. Okay, so there's always a term called flight to safety. Flight to safety. If you think your currency is in trouble, what you do is you switch your currency to something that you feel is safe. And traditionally, from the times of ancient Egypt, it has been to gold. People have fled to gold when they thought their currency was going to be useless. But no longer, because think of a wealthy Ukrainian who's being bombed and he has 1 ton of gold in his basement. He can't take it with him. Let's say he has a beautiful mansion. He can't take it with him. He's going to flee for his life, but he can't take his home and he can't take his gold. He can't take his silver. Maybe he could take a little bit of his wife's jewelry and hide it in his pockets because that's light and it's worth a lot of money. But that's about it. That's about it. Wouldn't it be nice if he could take an unlimited amount of something and it won't even weigh an ounce and nobody can take it from him? Even if someone beats him over the head and tries to rob him, they might find his wife's jewelry in his pocket, but they can't find his Bitcoin. And so there's going to be a gigantic flight to safety. And the flight is not going to be to gold any longer. It's going to be to Bitcoin. Number two, Even though Bitcoin is only 13 years old, it started its life January 3rd of 2009. It's only 13 years old. Gold is 7,000 years old. Actually, gold billions of years old, but man's experience of gold, man's honoring of gold started in ancient Egypt 7,000 years ago. But no longer can man rush to gold when there's a flight to safety. El Salvador, as you know, last year was the first sovereign nation to make Bitcoin its official legal tender. And Ukraine, by the way, just a few days ago during the war, made Bitcoin and Ethereum legal tender in the Ukraine. And for the first time ever, a city of Lugano in Switzerland is about to make Bitcoin legal tender in that town. I don't know how that's possible, but they're going to do it. And so the floodgates have opened. Right now, there's just two countries, El Salvador and Ukraine, but there's 190 countries around the world, and many of them don't like the US dollar. Many of them are enemies of the United States, and they would love to switch, but they're not sure if they should switch to Russian currency because maybe Russia won't be the leader. They're not sure if they should switch to the Chinese yuan because they don't know if China's going to be in charge. But Bitcoin is apolitical. It has no boundaries. It has no allegiances to any country. It's not pro-abortion or against abortion. It doesn't have any policies. It's totally, purely neutral. It's like a Swiss coin. It's totally neutral and therefore absolutely perfect. So Bitcoin has been around for 13 years and it's already legal tender in two countries out of 190. And I think there's going to be 5 countries and then 10 countries and then 20 countries and the floodgates will open. And when that happens, there'll be a giant fall in the price of the US dollar because it'll no longer be the high and mighty, almighty currency of the universe. It may no longer be the currency of the internet. When the US dollar falls, Bitcoin will rise. Number three, Europe is really frightened right now because they get their oil from Russia. And if Russia stops shipping oil to Europe, then everybody's going to get cold. All of the factories will have to shut down. No houses will have air conditioning or heating. It's going to be a disaster for all of Europe. And Russia said, you get your oil from me. If you want to keep getting your oil from me, then we'll let you buy it. If you're a friendly nation, that means don't say anything bad about Russia, and you pay us in Bitcoin. And so you have to be nice to Russia and you have to pay only in Bitcoin. Wow. When that takes hold, when people realize the significance of that, when people realize that Russia is snubbing its nose at the United States and may win, not necessarily the war with Ukraine, we'll see, but they may very well win the snubbing of the US dollar. And when the US dollar falls from grace, it's Bitcoin that will rise. You now have 3 proofs that Bitcoin will rise. You don't know how much yet, but I'm leading up to it. Number four, Bitcoin's been around, as I said, only 13 years. And if you stop people on the street and say, please explain what Bitcoin is, they'll say, I don't know, it's some new age thing. What's crypto? I don't know, I've heard the term. Is it Ethereum? But they won't know. What's the blockchain? What they don't know. What's a wallet? Most people have no idea whatsoever what any of these terms are. But crypto is going to be bigger than the internet. Crypto is going to be way bigger than the internet, and it's only 13 years old. Give it 15 years, give it 20 years, and it'll take over just like the internet took over. Who knew 30 years ago that you could do banking through this thing called the internet? Who knew you could just ask a question with your voice? Hey, Siri, what's the largest number of so-and-sos? Or what's the maximum number of Bitcoins there's ever going to be? And then your device will talk it back. Who knew that you could just talk to your cell phone and have it give you answers through something called the internet? Who knew? It would have seemed crazy to you. And yet, as crazy as that sounds, it's true. We all know that's true now. 30 years ago, no one had any idea that such a thing was possible, that you could do banking through the internet without having to go to a physical bank. And Crypto is going to be even bigger than the internet. And yet it's only 13 years old and no one even knows anything about it yet. But when they start getting it, when they start understanding it, then there's going to be a giant surge of desire to own it. And already the statistics are that 40% of Americans already own Bitcoin. 40%, even though they don't know what it is. Even you could even talk to people who own Bitcoin and they won't know what it is. They'll say, oh, it's this newfangled thing. Oh, it's based on a mathematical formula that nobody understands. They really don't know. And yet 40% own it, even though it's difficult. There is the largest platform that allows you to buy crypto is called Binance, and Binance is not allowed to operate in the United States. In fact, I used Binance in my hometown of Toronto, Canada. I'm a Canadian, and December 31st, I wasn't allowed to own any crypto in Binance. So I switched it to Gate.io, which is another platform. And on April 10th of 2022, coming up in just a couple of weeks, I'm not allowed to own any crypto in Gate.io. So not only is it new, but it's difficult to understand and it's difficult to own because all these platforms are being shut down for some reason. I don't know why. And so with all these difficulties, still 40% of Americans own Bitcoin. Amazing. With all those obstacles, they're still getting through the screen and buying Bitcoin. Well, as Bitcoin becomes more and more popular, as ordinary Americans, ordinary Canadians, ordinary Brits, ordinary Hong Kongers, Aussies, Kiwis, as ordinary Europeans demand the right to own crypto, demand the right to own Bitcoin, governments will have to relent. You can't fight the people. The government is there at the service of the people, and they're going to have to legitimize it and make it easy for their citizens to own it. And when that happens, it won't be 40%, it'll be maybe 90% of Americans and Canadians and Brits that own it. And when that happens, that's a giant surge in demand, for crypto and Bitcoin in particular. And when that happens, that also is going to push up the price of Bitcoin. That's number 4. Number 5 is that Bitcoin is the only thing in the whole universe that is completely decentralized. Completely decentralized. You don't have to rely on agreements with other people. You don't have to rely on the government. It is completely decentralized. No one is in charge. You might say, well, I own my house. I'm sorry, you don't. Why? Because the proof that you own the house is that you hold a piece of paper called a deed that says you own the house. The house isn't proof that you own it. Living in it isn't proof that you own it. The piece of paper is proof. And the piece of paper is proof only because governments and lawyers get together and agree on it. However, let's say Russia wins the war against Ukraine. And let's say you were a Ukrainian that owned a big mansion. When the war is over and you go back, do you still own that mansion? Maybe not, because all the agreements between you and your Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian lawyers, maybe those agreements aren't valid any longer. Maybe they're not valid any longer. The only purely decentralized asset in the whole universe is Bitcoin. No one can take it away from you. You can hold it in your wallet and nobody knows, and you are the absolute definite owner, and there's a universe of proof that you own it, and you don't need agreements from lawyers or other people or governments. Wow. With all those 5 proofs, I'm now going to give you a bonus 6th proof of why Mr. Bitcoin will hit $2 million. Now listen carefully to this. First of all, in proofs 1 to 5, I've showed you that there's a coming and already currently existing giant surge away from the US dollar and towards Bitcoin, a giant surge away from fiat currency to Bitcoin. Now, how big will this surge be? Well, let me explain it to you. If you add up the value of all the gold in the world, it comes to $10 trillion. If you add up the value of all the Bitcoin in the world, it comes to about $1 trillion. If you add up the value of all the other coins, Ethereum and all of them, there's another 1 trillion. If you add up the value of all of the stocks in the world, all of the commodities in the world, all of the real estate in the world, all of the silver and iron and uranium in the world, if you add up the value of all jewelry in the world, if you add up the value of all farm equipment and everything, if you add up the value of everything, all the bicycles, all the cars, all the eyeglasses, all the lipstick, if you add up the value of everything in the whole world, it comes to 1,000 trillion. That's actually called a quadrillion, but let's stick to trillions. 1,000 trillion is the total value of everything. Right now, the value of the most important of all of those, Bitcoin, is 1 trillion out of 1,000 trillion. That's a tenth of 1%. Well, that shouldn't be. For example, gold is already 10 trillion. Why should Bitcoin be under 1 trillion? And I think when the word gets out, when the 5 forces that I've already proved to you, when they take hold over the next 5 or 10 years, let's say by the year 2030, then I think Bitcoin could conservatively be worth 5%. 5%, that's all. For example, gold is right now 1%. So to say that Bitcoin is going to be 5%, that's not outrageous at all, since Bitcoin has huge advantages over gold. Gold can be stolen from you. You can't carry around gold. You have to pay a lot of money to store it each year. You have to have guards or you have to go to a bank. So 5%, I think that's pretty reasonable. 5% of 1,000 trillion is 50 trillion. 50 trillion. Right now, Bitcoin is worth a total of just under 1 trillion. 1 trillion up to 50 trillion is 50x. I think by the year roughly 2030, Bitcoin price will go up by 50x because the amount of Bitcoin can't go up. There's a fixed amount, 21 million. And right now there's 18.5 million in circulation. And so we're almost at the 21 million. So the total value of all Bitcoin is not going to go up because there's more coins around. It can only go up because there's a fixed amount and the price of each coin will go up. 50x, well, right now, Bitcoin has risen from about 38,000 to about 47,000 today. But let's just use the number 40,000 to be conservative, because even though it's at $47,000 today, by a few days from now, it could have dropped back to 40. We don't know. So let's just use 40,000 and multiply that by 50x is 2 million US dollars per coin. Hello, hodl, 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 buy Bitcoin, education and entertainment only. Remember I said that. Buy Bitcoin and hold. And I think by the year 2030, your asset will have gone up 50 times. If you could only buy 1 Bitcoin today, that's $40,000, you'll be a multimillionaire within this decade. Wow, wow, wow. And for those of you not much familiar with crypto, you don't buy a whole Bitcoin. Like if you want to buy a share of IBM or a share of Tesla, you can't buy half a share or 3/4 of a share. You have to buy a whole share, but not with crypto. You can buy 0.372095602 coins. So you can even invest $100 in Bitcoin. And that's my presentation on why the MetaMan is confident that Bitcoin will hit $2 million by about the year 2030. And you're not going to have to wait till then, because this year of 2022, I bet you more countries will adopt Bitcoin as their sovereign currency. And this year, 2022, there'll be more harm to the US dollar. Fewer people will respect it. Fewer countries will respect it. It's going to be a disintegration of the US dollar and the rise of the Bitcoin. $2 million Bitcoin. Wow. If you liked it, send this to some friends. If you liked it, then like this video. If you liked it, then subscribe to this channel. And why don't you comment also? Comment, comment, comment. Do you think I'm crazy? Do you think it's too high? Do you think it should be higher than that? I'd like to hear your comment. Thank you. You are now much wiser than you were just a few minutes ago. Please click on Meta in order to subscribe to my channel. And please click on this video, which is my most recent video, my previous one, and please click on that video, which Google and YouTube think is the most appropriate if you enjoyed this video.